how's it going? Hey, I know we're not starting yet. We're going to be starting, let's see, yeah. We'll be starting here in 7 minutes and 8 seconds, but thought I'd do my little opening act. Once again, I'm doing this live because I haven't had time to shoot it before. Why haven't I had time? Well, I'm taking classes just like you guys. I'm in the film production program, and I'm taking a screenwriting class, among other classes, screenwriting, audio production. And I had to write the third act of my screenwriting screenplay, and had some fun with that. The screenplay that I'm writing is actually based on a true story. Don't you always hate that? Based on a true story. It's supposed to give the story more weight and so forth, right? Hey, Fadumo, and we've got Scott with us as well. So I'm not going to tell you the screenplay because it's based on a true story, but not completely, I took, literary license. I'll tell you the true story. So I'm in high school, right? And a friend of mine and his brother, we're young, we're stupid, right? Young and stupid. That's the way it is. And high school kids. And it's late at night, and we kind of get it in our heads that, well, there's a water tower up there on the hill right up above us. Hey, Brooke, there's a water tower above us, and we get it in our heads that we're going to go swimming in the water tower. Yeah, right? I mean, come on. So we get on our motorcycles and we drive on up and put on our swimsuits and so forth. And my friend, his name is John, and then his brother is Courtney. My friend and I, John, hey, Adrian, we climb up the water tower. It's pitch black. It's nighttime, right? So we climb up the water tower, and we somehow or another, it's open, and we open the lid and we climb on in. So John and I are inside the water tower swimming in this water. Now, I want to communicate to you this idea. You do not know what pitch black is until you are in an enclosed water tower with the lid shut in the middle of the night. There is no light. No light at all. Even at night, when you're outside at night, even on a moonless night that's overcast, there's still light because there are city lights around and they're illuminating the skies. You do not know what pitch black is until you're in there. And it's a deep water tower. It's big. And it's black, pitch black. It is scary. It is freaky as crap, right? And I know there's no monsters in there, but you couldn't convince me of that at the time. I'm freaking out, right? I'm trying to be cool, right? I'm there with my friends, so on and so forth. He's freaking out too, but he's trying to be cool. And we pretend to swim around, but we're really pretty terrified. And we're waiting for Courtney to climb on in. Well, we hear something outside. We hear Courtney saying, "Yes, sir." No, sir. No, they're off on a trail. We were just going to go on a trail. No, it's just the three of us. No, they're up on the trail. Yeah, I was going to follow. What's that? And it's pretty clear. And he says, "Yes, officer," "No, officer," instead of "sir." It was "No, officer." It's pretty clear he's talking with a police officer. So here John and I are swimming around this water tower, freaking out, afraid monsters are going to eat us. And Courtney is outside being interrogated by a police officer. We're terrified. Well, finally, John climbs up and peeks out of the water tower, And Courtney is down there alone, laughing his ass off. He wasn't talking to a police officer. He was just pretending to talk to a police officer to scare us. And yeah, it worked. It scared us. We climbed out. He never got in the tower, by the way. Courtney, if you ever watch these, I don't remember you ever getting in that water tower, you scum. So we got out. We were like, okay, we're done with that. We're done with that. Filled off, check that box. We're out of here. And so we got back on our motorcycles and took off. So yeah, that is the true story upon which I'm basing the screenplay I'm writing for this class. It's just a short. It's supposed to be a 10-minute screenplay. Of course, in my screenplay, there's a history of what's happened in that water tower before, and it involves horror and so on and so forth. So that's where I've taken some creative license. But I'll tell you what, when we were inside that water tower, you couldn't have convinced us there were no monsters in there. It was a freaky. We have Damien with us and Alma as well. So pretty soon here and Adrian will, Adrian, when you came in, we'll be able to get started. So yeah, I'll try to take more time to prepare an official opening act in the future. I just had to take that time to do my homework. You guys get it. All kinds of things you want to do, all kinds of things you're supposed to do, but homework gets in the way every now and again. But that's all right. It is all good. And we've got a few folks, so we'll wait a moment and then we will go ahead and get started. We've got a fun one today. We're going to talk about cheating. All right? Yeah, we've got 9 seconds. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's come on over here and let's officially start our lecture. So, cheating happens in business, right? Well, what's cheating? What is cheating? It's one of the things that's fascinating to me is there's a lot of words in the English language. I'm sure it's the case in other languages out there. So Fidumo and Damien, I believe you speak some other languages as well. Maybe others do. Here's the point. There's plenty of words in our respective languages that we know the word and we can even use it in a sentence. But how do you define it? You can't really define it. A great example is ironic. You know the word ironic. Yeah, Spanish. There you go, Damien. Ironic. Ironic. You can use it. I can use it. You hear it all the time. We say, oh, that's so ironic. What does ironic mean? Can you define it? Well, another one of those words is ethics. Ethics, you know the word. You use it in a sentence. That is ethical. That is unethical. But how do you define it? And what does it mean to cheat? We know the word cheating, right? When you look at in terms of ethics, what does it mean? Well, that's what we get to play with today. Hey, Laura. So, let's see. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we've got some Alanis Morissette coming in. There you go, Scott. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. What does it mean to cheat? And by the way, since you're citing Alanis Morissette, we'll go ahead and give you that. Why not? And yes, we had Damien confirming Spanish, right? All right, fantastic. So, let's talk about cheating. Now, we're actually going to look at a couple of readings today. One of them is excerpt from Defects, Book 3. Oh, yeah, Book 3. Oh, yes, of course, Book 3. Whatever, right? Don't worry, it'll be interesting, okay? And then we're going to talk about Of Cheating by St. Francis de Assisi, right? Okay. No. No, it's not Francis de Assisi. He's the gardener. Augustine. It'll be Augustine. And we'll make sure when we actually get there. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about this. The first thing I want to do is I want to take a moment, and it's going to be more than a moment. We're going to take 2 moments. And I want to define, I'm making sure I am broadcasting. I want to define ethics for us, okay? This will be worth it, I promise. So here's a dictionary definition of ethics. Standards of behavior. Okay, this is key. Ethics is all about behavior. Okay, standards of behavior that tell us how human beings ought to act, behavior, action, in the many situations in which they find themselves as friends, parents, children, citizens, business people, teachers, students, professionals, and so on. So here's the idea. We all inhabit many roles. At this moment, I am inhabiting the role of teacher. You are inhabiting the role of student. Okay, but there are many, many other roles that we inhabit. I also inhabit the role of a husband and a son and a father and all kinds of things. You too. You inhabit all kinds of roles. And the way we act, the way we behave in those roles is what is the standard of behavior that is around which ethics are built, okay? So, for example, a standard of behavior for a student is you don't practice plagiarism, all right? As a student, you do not plagiarize. It is unethical, okay? But as an employee, you do not lie on a resume or as a job candidate. That's unethical. It's also illegal. And as a teacher, I do not provide information that is destructive, condescending, berating of you. I have an ethical responsibility to treat you as the aspiring adults that you are. Okay? So, different situations, right? Now, here's the thing, though. Ethics are not feelings. They're not your personal values. They are not religious morals or laws or even culturally accepted norms. So, that's our dictionary definition. Let me show you what I mean. Okay? And let me go ahead and get out of the way. That'll help a little bit. All right. So let's first look at a personal value. Okay? A personal value is a personal guiding principle, such as in this example right here, I always try to tell the truth. And I do. I always try to tell the truth. Now, sometimes I don't know what the truth is. Sometimes, we'll look at ethics, right? I always try to tell the truth. That is a personal guiding principle, a personal value. I also always try to be on time. In fact, I try to be early, ergo why I start these things early. I always try to show respect to those whom I love, my wife, my students, folks like that. Those are personal guiding principles. Not ethics, personal guiding principles. Then we have morals. All right, this is when a value is codified by the community. And what that means is the community says, hey, listen, you know what? We need to all get along. And it's really good if we trust each other. If we don't trust each other, we're sure as hell not going to get along. So we ought to take, do you believe in telling the truth? Do you try to tell the truth? You know what? We ought to agree as a community that we are always going to try to tell the truth. And so to codify it means to kind of make it official in terms of the canon of a given community. So this is most often done in the terms of religion. It does not have to be religion, but morals are quite often first codified by a community through the mechanism of religion. So, for example, thou shalt not bear false witness. Tell the truth. You don't lie, right? Okay, so that's a moral. Well, now we have laws, all right? A law is when we actually say, you know what, as a community, we are going to enforce this thing and we're going to attach consequences. It's not now just, hey, it's a personal principle or even a religious principle that we're all kind of on, pinky promise to keep. We're now going to enforce this thing and attach to it consequences. So, for example, in the United States, we have laws regarding libel, slander, and perjury. Those are all different ways that we can lie. Okay. Then what's ethics? Ethics is the best thing to do given their circumstance. And so therefore, as a father, as a parent, I might tell my child, yes, there's a Santa Claus. Well, now hold on a moment. I already said that I always try to tell the truth. And I don't bear false witness, although, spoiler alert, okay, you heard it here first. There is no Santa Claus. So I just bore false witness. And I also perjured myself because my kid trusts me. I'm an authority figure to my child, and therefore I have abused that authority. I've perjured myself. And yet, I may consider it an ethical thing to tell my child there's a Santa Claus. I may or may not. Some people choose not to tell it in the Christian tradition. Of course, in the Muslim tradition, there isn't a question here. In the Jewish tradition, in the Buddhist tradition, in the atheist tradition, there's no question here. In the Christian tradition, you may choose to tell your child that there's a Santa Claus. Well, why would you do that? Well, a whole variety of reasons. As a father, I want to, deliver magic to my children, in the same way that we tell stories. It's also a great way to teach moral principles. It's a great way to be part of the community. The existence of Santa Claus is kind of a community thing for kids when they're 5, 6 years old and so forth. It's an ethical decision. Now, here's the thing, though. Ethical dilemmas, and we're going to talk about an ethical dilemma here in a moment, and you get to vote on it and get some points. Ethical dilemmas are when you're between a rock and a hard place, right? You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. No matter which direction you go, you're going to piss somebody off. Give you an example. Hey, during a pandemic, should we go back to school, K through 12? Well, you might say that's a scientific question. You might say it's a political question. Ultimately, it's an ethical question because here's the thing. Let's say that you say, no, we're not going to go back to school. Safety is paramount. Well, you might have parents saying, okay, listen, I don't have childcare. I have a job. And my son or daughter is suffering in terms of their education and their studies. I need the schools to reopen. The CDC recommends that schools open if everyone wears masks and people are 3 feet apart. It's now 3 feet, not 6 feet. We can reopen these things intelligently and carefully. You have an obligation to do that. They say, okay, you're right. We'll open the schools. Well, then the other half of the population freaks out and says, what do you mean you're reopening the schools? You're going to shove all those kids together in a petri dish? You actually think a kid is going to maintain 3-foot distance during a 7-hour school day? Are you smoking weed? Nobody is going to have that, right? It's an ethical dilemma. You just can't win, okay? How many times do you say that helps, have someone, or how many times do you say something that helps or have someone say? Yeah, I don't know. Good question. Probably not very often. Damien says, ethical dilemma. My medical records are private. I don't want to share my vaccination card. Yes. Okay. This is a great example. All right. So first of all, Damien rocks that. And that is like, I'm going to give that 2 points for real world example. Okay. Because Damien, this is bang on right. I am just going to talk in terms of ethics. I am not going to share what I think about the vaccine. Actually, I am. Get vaccinated. Get vaccinated. Actually, I'm going to do this. Get the hell vaccinated. Okay? All right. But now let's look at, honestly, from the ethical standpoint. And this is real, folks. I back this up. All right. So first of all, should you get vaccinated? Well, I just told you you should get vaccinated. For the love of all that's holy, get vaccinated. I want to take my mask off. I want to go to a show. But now hold on. It's your body, your choice. It is. I do not have the moral or ethical or legal authority to force you to take an emergency medication. I do not have that. I should not have that. So now I can also say your body and your choice affects my body and my choice, but nevertheless, you have the ethical right to refuse a vaccine. Well, what if you do get the vaccine, but people say, I want to see your card. Show me your papers. How do you say, show me your papers in German? I'm a Schiffbauer. I should know the answer to that, right? Show me your papers. Hold on. My medical records and that vaccination card is private. I have a legal and ethical right to, I'm not going to just willy-nilly show my medical records to anyone who asks. On the other hand, we as a society say, okay, listen, I understand, man. I totally agree you have the right to say no to a vaccination. I totally agree that even if you do get vaccinated, you're under no obligation to show your card everywhere to make sure, so that we can accept you as a human being. You have that right. On the other hand, folks, this frickin' economy is dying. I don't want to wear a mask anymore. I want to get back to normal. We can't do that until we have herd immunity, and herd immunity won't happen until we're at like 85%, right? So this is classic ethical dilemma. Classical ethical dilemma. Okay? All right. So, you know what, Fidumo? I totally agree. Always best to tell the truth. Sometimes we don't know what that is, right? Let me show you what I mean. Now, I am going to, and I'm going to activate this right now. I'm going to tell you a story, and I want you in this poll to say whether or not you agree or disagree with what I did. So while I tell you the story, pull up a window and go to pollev.com and type in Lawn Schiffbauer, no ER, 302. I ought to get a professional account so it can be an easier thing to type into. But go ahead and go to that URL. You can also text using this system down here, but just so you know, that's there. So while I tell the story, do me a favor, go to another browser, pull up pollev.com and that link, and you'll be able to take the poll. Okay, so here's the story. See this? Ford Escort. 19-something or another Ford Escort. My wife and I, our very first car when we got married was a Ford Escort. And it was this model and this color, all right? Not this exact car, but it was this car, right? And it served us fine, but we had a kid and we had another kid on the way and so on. And no, we had two kids. We had two kids and we had a third on the way. And we're like, we got to get a bigger car, right? So I wanted to sell this car. So I put an ad in the paper. That's right. It's so old that it's back when you put an ad in the paper. Kind of like selling it on KSL. All right. Put an ad in the paper and started to get some interest. Now, a little backstory on this car. At one time, when I worked for FedEx, Memphis was experiencing some flooding, and I basically drove it through a lake to get home at 3 a.m. And it slightly warped the head on top of the engine block. So you've got an engine block, and there's a cylinder head that sits on top of the engine block where all the pistons come up and so forth. And so where all the valves are, you know what I mean. And if you don't, it doesn't matter. There's a big hunk of metal on top of the engine, and it warped slightly, really slightly. So my friend and I, we tore the head off and replaced all the parts and everything, but this head was warped. And so we took it to a shop who just shaved like 1 millimeter off of the head of this engine block. Now, the head. Well, now, you can't just put the head back on the block because the distance is not the same since a little bit was shaved off. The pistons wouldn't hit right. So they made a shim, a very, very thin piece of metal, kind of like a gasket that sat between the engine block and the head. So you have the engine block, a shim, and the head, and it worked beautifully. Worked fantastic. Never had another problem. Okay, back to selling this thing. Well, I mean it when I say I always try to tell the truth. I really mean that. So the first guy came along and started to look at this car. And he's looking at it, we're driving it, and so on and so forth. And I explained to him at one point, I open up the hood, and I say, now, I want to let you know that the head warped at one point, and so we went ahead and shaved it, rebuilt it, and you see that gold, made of brass or something. You see that brass shim right there, barely see it. I rubbed off some of the guck so you could see it. That shim is there, so just so you know, the reason it's there is because I couldn't even finish the explanation. He said, whoa. You're saying the head warped? I said, yeah, but we did this, that, and the other. He didn't say another word. He just turned around, walked away, got in his car, and left. And I'm like, well, holy crap. I was gobsmacked. I just didn't know what to say or do. I really needed to sell this car. And apparently that turned him off so bad he didn't even say another word. He just left. All right. So the next person who came along, I made the decision that I'm not going to volunteer any information. Now, if the person asks me specifically about that gold shim, I will answer it 100% truthfully. But I will not volunteer information. I will say, you're welcome to test drive the car, and I will answer any questions you have. And they did. They asked me about this, I answered it. They asked me about that, I answered it. And that's it. They never asked me about the engine, and I never volunteered anything. They paid me the money and they drove off. Okay. So, the question I have for you is, what was the most ethical thing for me to do? To volunteer all the information as I did before, or to commit to answering all the questions truthfully and allow the customer to ask what they wanted to ask. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at this. Should I tell the buyer everything I know about the car, or should I answer all the buyer's questions fully and truthfully? Okay, so that, I hope I didn't close it. Did I close that thing? No, there it is. I think it's right here. Why can't I pull it up? Oh, there it is. Okay, so let's go ahead and answer that. Hopefully you are in the program there, and you can go ahead and provide your input. It's 100% anonymous, by the way. I don't know who answered what, so don't worry. So I'll come back over here to our questions, and let's see what we got. Okay, let's come on back and see how it came. So, gosh, how do I hit a You know what? I'm just going to pull this on over. Here's what you guys said. All right? 13% of you said you should tell the buyer everything, like I did with the first person. Tell the buyer everything. And that's what I thought. Still sort of do. We'll talk more about it. Don't worry. 88% of you said, no, just go ahead and answer all the buyer's questions, right? This is a classic ethical dilemma, right? Let's see. Now Scott points out what Aquinas says, right? Where he says, just point out hidden defects. We're going to come back to that, baby. So Scott, even though he's referring to the current lecture, I'm going to give him points for past lecture there, right? Adrian says, just want to ask if you sold it as if the head wasn't rebuilt or if it was a fair price rebuilt. Yeah, I sold it for Blue Book. Yeah, I sold it for Blue Book. Fidumo says, the reason I'm saying this is because when the payers want something, it's someone like you who wants to get something out. Yeah, absolutely, because he's paying his money. Laura says, I believe the buyer has an ethical responsibility to do due diligence, right? Same as buying a home. You know what, Laura? It's like you freaking watched this. Maybe you watched the video. You guys are on to something. You'll see what I mean. Okay. So, by the way, I'm just going to take this on up to this. I'm going to take this on up to 10. Right. And Laura, since you brought in, buying a home, real world example and so forth. Adrian talked about Blue Book. I'm going to put that in there. And so Yeah, you know the routine. You've got your first time, well, your timestamp, which is 10:27. Go ahead and after the lecture, email me 10:27. You know the routine, and we'll make it worth your while. Okay? All right. Well, I want you to keep this example of my car. Keep this example in your head because we're going to explore the bejesus out of this. Okay? So let's check this out. Now, in the first reading, there's this kind of debate going on between the Stoic Diogenes and his student Antipater. And that's a great example, by the way, of where you don't need to agree with your professor. You don't need to agree with your professor. Diogenes is the mentor, and his student Antipater says, no, you're wrong. Okay, so let's look at these. So Diogenes says, the seller must declare the defects of his wares as far as the law of the land requires, but otherwise, provided he tells no untruths, is entitled as a seller of goods to sell them as profitably as he can. So, to put this in English, the seller is responsible for telling the buyer all the defects as far as the law requires. But if the law does not require defects to be disclosed, then they're not required to say a thing so long as they don't lie. So, for example, if you're looking to buy a used car, you'll see something down there that says clean title or recovery title, or not a recovery title, or gosh, if one of you knows, let me know, right? It's reclaim title, something like that. It basically means this car was in an accident. Now, in that case, the law of the land, now it wasn't rebuilt, Adam. I know what you mean there. As Laura points out, laws of the land require, maybe it is a rebuilt. You have to tell them that, right? But if not, it is rebuilt. Okay, thank you. Yeah, kind of. My son is looking to buy a car, so I had this conversation with him not long ago, and yet I forget. Rebuilt. All right. So this is what Diogenes says. Well, Antipater sees it differently. Wrong button, Lon. Antipater says, no. All facts must be revealed, and the purchaser must be as fully informed as the seller, including if other vendors have the same product at a lower price. So the seller should tell the buyer everything, whether they're required to or not, including if somebody down the street has a lower price. Wow. Okay. Well, I want to ask you this. Can you think of an example where a company follows this approach of revealing everything, right? And including prices and so on and so forth. Can you think of any examples? Now, in the meantime, let's take a look at this. Laura says, my husband refuses to buy a car from a private seller because they are not held to the same lawful standards as the dealership. Fantastic real-world example. Adrian says, for me, I bought a Subaru and asked if a timing belt was fixed. He told me yes, and he did change the belt, but not the whole timing belt system, and my car was totaled 2 months later. Oh, that hurts. Now, when it comes to this question, think about companies like Progressive that shares the prices of other insurance agencies, or companies like that. There are companies that try to do this. By the way, Damien says, let's talk about what the Brad Patagonia does with their Warnware program. If it's in good condition when I return it, should I tell them that once I poured a milkshake on it? It's true. REI used to have a policy of you can return anything at any time. And people used to tease the REI stood for rent equipment indefinitely. So, yeah. Well, let's continue to explore this. Let's talk about homes. Who brought up homes earlier? Laura did, right? Laura brought up homes. All right. Let's talk homes. So there's a story in this reading about Pythias. Pythias, there's this story. I'll go ahead and come in and tell a little bit. Pythias is this guy. He owns this villa. He owns this villa on a lake. Gorgeous lake, gorgeous villa. He has it all going on. But he catches word that this really, really successful, famous, hugely rich fishmonger, a guy who sells fish, is coming to town. And Pythias, he gets this idea. He wants to sell his villa to this fishmonger. But how does he do it? Well, he does this. He goes out to the ocean and he tells all the fishermen, hey, listen, do me a favor, and tomorrow, fish in my lake. Just take all your boats and bring them to my lake. And you fish all day long in my lake. And the fishermen are like, there's no fish in your lake, dude. And he said, I know. Here's some money. Come fish in my lake. Just pretend. And they go, okay, fine. If you pay us, you bet. Well, then Pythias goes to this fishmonger and says, hey, I hear you're in town. I want to be a good host and welcome you to our village. Why don't you come to my villa tomorrow and I'll give you lunch. And fishmonger says, all right, I didn't get rich by paying for lunch. I'll go ahead and take a free lunch. So he comes over, and it's an impressive villa, but he looks out over the lake and he sees all these fishermen clamoring in the lake. And the fishmonger is like, the hell? What's all this? And Pythias is like, and the quote here is, why wonder? All the fish for the Syracuse market are here. They come here to be in fresh water. The fishermen cannot dispense dispense this villa. Okay? And it should be without this villa. In other words, this is where all the freshwater fish are. All the fish. They're here. They have to fish here. And frankly, they pay me because I own the lake. I own the villa. I own the lake. They pay me to fish here. Well, the fishmonger, he sees dollar signs, right? So he says, dude, I need to buy your villa. And Pythias is like, no. Why would I sell this thing? I mean, come on. I've got it. Sweet. Nice villa, nice lake. Fishermen pay me to fish in it. No, I'm good. Well, this just makes the, fishmonger all the more hungry for it. He says, no, I'll pay you twice the value. And Pythias goes, listen, I understand what you're saying, and I admit that's a pretty attractive offer, but I'm not really prepared to, sell and cut off that source of income for me. And the fishmonger loses his mind and says, I'll pay you anything you want. I'll pay you this much. Pythias says, okay, fine. If you really need the villa that bad, I'll sell it to you. So they make a deal, trade money. Pythias takes off, takes his own refrigerator with him, his couches, his favorite chair, takes off. Well, the next morning, the fishmonger is all set to watch all these fishermen come and fish in the lake. And nobody shows up. Nobody shows up. And so he's like, the hell, what's going on? So he goes out to the ocean, sees all the fishermen out in the ocean, and he's like, why aren't you fishing the lake? And the fishermen are like, dude, there's nothing in that lake. We never fish there. So Pythias totally ripped off the fishmonger, right? And by the way, I see more real-world examples here, so you guys are getting that 10. Well, now, it's pretty easy for us to say that what Pythias did was unethical, right? Pretty easy to say he's unethical. But now let me ask you this. And Laura, since you mentioned homes, one of the tricks that a realtor will tell you is when you're selling homes, bake cookies just before the open house. Have you heard that one before? Bake cookies or bread before the open house, because home buyers love to feel that, smell that homey scent, aroma going through the house. I have a neighbor who was trying to sell his home, and he had some graffiti on the side of his wall. And so he called the city and asked them to remove nearby graffiti on this wall because he didn't want potential home buyers to drive by and notice that there's gang symbols on a wall near his home. So he had those removed. Had another person who asked a police officer, a neighbor who lives just down the street, asked him to park his squad car in this person's driveway on the week of in his driveway on the week of open houses. So that way, when people are coming to look at this one home, they'll see that there's a police car in the driveway, and oh, look, a neighbor is a police officer, right? So is this just faking a fish-filled lake? You know, now, I don't know, right? Are these ethical things to do? Are you being honest, right? There's nothing wrong with baking cookies. I can bake cookies if I want. There's nothing wrong with asking the city to remove graffiti. The city has a responsibility to do that anyway. What's the big deal about asking a friend to park his squad car in his driveway for a week? Yeah, but are you misleading, right? So these are things we go through in business. All right. Now let's talk about cheating. St. Thomas Aquinas, you're right. All right. So Scott looked ahead to St. Thomas Aquinas. By the way, Laura said, I got an inspection for a reason when I bought my house. Dang straight, girl. Yeah, totally right. Right? Totally. Yeah, need to get an inspection. So St. Thomas Aquinas kind of goes into some detail on this, as Scott pointed out. Let's play with this. Now, remember from a previous lecture with, I think it was either Plato or Aristotle. I'm going to be completely frank with you guys. I get all those people mixed up. Plato, Aristotle. I think it was Plato. Yeah, Aristotle is the one that was freaking out. No, it was probably Aristotle. Anyway, we talked about natural types of exchange, right? Let me remind you of this because it's going to make sense when we talk about St. Thomas Aquinas. A tradesman is one whose business consists of the exchange of things. Whoa, what a revelation. Tradesman, exchange of things. Okay, I got it. According to the philosopher, exchange, and this is from Aristotle, from St. Thomas Aquinas, because he's citing on politics. Exchange of things is twofold. One, natural as were it necessary, whereby one commodity exchanged for another, or money taken in exchange for the commodity, in order to satisfy the needs of life. That's natural exchange. We are exchanging goods and services for goods and services or money in order to meet the needs of life. I need food, I need water, I need shelter, I need clothing, I need Netflix. These are things you need to sustain life. Maybe not Netflix. Okay. Such trading, properly speaking, does not belong to tradesmen, but rather to housekeepers or civil servants who have to provide the household or state with the necessities of life. In other words, hey man, I'm the man of the house. I know this because my wife lets me be. And I need to see after the home. And when I screw up, she then steps in and does it properly. So we need to make sure the house is in good working order. We have all the food we need. The electricity is done right. This is needs of the household, right? Okay. The other kind of exchange is either that of money for money, which they do not like, or for any commodity for money, not on account of the necessities of life, but for profit. And this kind of exchange, properly speaking, regards tradesmen according to the philosopher. So, okay, profit. Profit, not needs of life, profit. Don't worry, this is going somewhere. The former kind of exchange is commendable, for life, because it supplies a natural need. But the latter is justly deserving of blame, because considered in itself, it satisfies the greed for gain, which knows no limits to and tends to infinity. Profit, greed. You remember all that. Okay, but let's ask ourselves this. Not if the gain is used to satisfy natural needs of life. So, is profit bad? Not if you're using it to further your life. Check this out. Gain, which is the end of trading, though it not implying by its nature anything virtuous or necessary, does not in and of itself connote anything sinful or contrary to virtue. Wherefore, nothing prevents gain from being directed to some necessary or even virtuous end, and thus trades becomes lawful. Okay, what in the holy heck are they saying? They're saying, listen, if you're trading stuff to meet the needs of life, you're fine. If you're trading stuff to make a profit for gain, now you're being sketchy. Now you're on thin ice. Well, now, hold on. What if I use that gain or that profit to virtuous ends? I help my family grow. I help my community. I invest. Remember, Protestant work ethic and so forth. I really take this profit and reinvest it into my life, into my family, into my community, and so forth. Oh, well, then you're totally copacetic. You're totally fine. Okay? Well, let's keep going. All right? But what about defects? Selling things, right? So now think about my car. Think about my car and the defects. It is altogether sinful to have recourse to deceit in order to sell a thing for more than its just price, because this is to deceive one's neighbor so as to injure him. Okay. I was not asking more than its just price. I was asking a fair blue book price for the car. Okay? Hence, Tully says, contracts should be entirely free from double dealing. The seller must not impose upon the bidder, nor the buyer upon one that bids against him. Okay, so you should declare things that are wrong, okay? But you definitely shouldn't sell it for more than a just price. So do I need to disclose absolutely everything, according to him, with my car? Well, this is what he says. there is no need to publish beforehand by the public crier the defects of the goods one is offering for sale. Okay, what do you mean publish by public crier? Well, now remember, I put an ad in the paper. That's the public crier, right? Hear ye, hear ye. Imagine I'm ringing a bell and holding some paper. Be it known unto the city of Sandy, actually this was Memphis, Lon is selling a car. I'm not required to put in the paper the defects, okay? So I do not need to publish beforehand the defects. Because if he were to begin by announcing its defects, the bidders would be frightened to buy. They wouldn't even call. All right, that's fair. Though ignorance of the other quantities that might be rendered the same thing good and serviceable, such defects ought to be stated to each individual that offers to buy. Okay, I don't have to put it in the paper, but when they come to me, I should be prepared to state the defects. And then he will be able to compare the virtuous points one with the other, the good with the bad, and nothing prevents that which is defective in one respect being useful in many others. In other words, the buyer can then weigh the pros and cons of the car. All right. Now, however, once the customer shows up, if such like defects be hidden and the seller does not make them known, the sale will be illicit and fraudulent. But there is no need to publish beforehand by the public crier the defects. Now, here's the thing about hidden. You could see that gold shim. I open the hood. It's a clean engine. You can see the gold, brass, whatever shim. Is that defect hidden? I am laying bare to the customer the defect. I'm not saying it verbally, but I'm opening the hood and pointing to the engine and saying, here's the engine. Have I told them about the defect, or have I hidden it? At what detail? If the defect be manifest, for instance, if a horse have but one eye, or the goods through useless to the buyer, useless to someone else, provided the seller takes as much as he ought from the price, he is not bound to state the defect of the goods. Okay, if I don't hide the defect, if I open the hood and show it, and I'm asking a fair price, I'm not required to go into detail. Since perhaps on account of the defect, the buyer might want him to allow a greater rebate than he need. I've already reduced the price because of the head. If I go into detail on it, you might ask for even more to be taken off, and I'm not prepared to do that. Wherefore the seller may look to his own indemnity by withholding the defect of the goods. So listen, I'm going to open the hood. I'm going to show you everything. If you're smart enough, I forget who it said, but you should do your due diligence yourself. By the way, when I've sold other cars, they've asked, can I take the car to a mechanic to have them look at it? My answer is yes, right? But that doesn't mean I need to call out the defects myself. You should know what you're looking at. So here's the last little quote for this. Tricks and treachery are the practice of fools that don't have brains enough to be honest. I like that. I kind of believe that if you're honest and upfront and you try to do the right thing, you're going to be treated well and you're going to treat others well and everything's going to be fine. It's only fools that don't have brains enough to be honest that try to trick you. All right? And so there you go, folks. That is Diophyssus and St. Thomas Aquinas take on what is cheating, what is honesty, and what is not. And even though these writings are a bazillion years old, I think we can see that those questions are equally applicable today. Those ethical dilemmas have not gone away. All right. So hope you found that interesting. Alma said, I had people tell me that they got a lemon. And like Scott says, if you don't know much about cars, you could be stuck with a lemon. Yeah. Do your due diligence. Have people who know what they're looking for look at it with you. Okay. So everyone, there you are. Fantastic work today, by the way. Your engagement was through the roof. You know the routine. Send me an email. I'm going to take care of you because you earned it. All right? So in the meantime, have a fantastic rest of the week, an even better weekend, and we will see you all on Monday. All right? We'll see you later.